Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the REDX podcast. Welcome back to the REDX podcast. Hopefully, you're a return viewer. If not, welcome for the first time. We are so excited to have you all here. I'm super excited for today's guest. His name is Kyle Handy from San Antonio, Texas. Kyle, my man, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Beautiful weather out here. It's finally cooling off here in Texas, so definitely can't complain.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear it. We're going to talk about some amazing stuff today. For those of you joining us, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, on our website, on LinkedIn, wherever you are, please chat in. Let us know where you're from. Let us know you're watching. Let us know if you have any questions, because today, Kyle, we're going to put you on the spot. We're going to have you answering all the questions, just sharing all your knowledge here. Maybe not all of it, but hopefully a good chunk of it. So please let us know where you're from. Send your questions in. We'll respond to those. I'm super excited because today we are talking about content strategy, and how content can help attract buyers, attract clients, and also kind of support your existing pool of clients. I'm excited about this, Kyle, because I was telling you before the show what you do in your company, right? You're an EXP agent, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what you do in real estate as far as creating amazing content, providing value no matter what, and then using that to attract people to you, in addition to your prospecting, is a huge part of what we do and what I do here at REDX, which is creating content to help build an audience and providing that audience with value no matter what, right? So super excited for all of that. Kyle, let's start with just a little bit of your background. How long you been in real estate, where you come from, and then how that led to what you're doing today.
Yeah, you bet. So I started in real estate in 2008, straight out of college, graduated, from university with a finance degree, and didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, let's get in the, try real estate out. I was like a 22-year-old kid. I didn't know better. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. And, 08 was a challenging market, as we all know, but I was, so appreciative that that's when I came in because, I got to start from the bottom and just kind of, work my way up. And even as a college, just a graduate making even like 40 grand a year, that's a lot of money. So I was like, this is great, So for 5 years, I kind of worked my way up, continued just to sell real estate as an individual agent to where, I was making good money, 2 to 250 a year, GCI, by 2013 or so. But like most agents, I was working a ton of hours. I was working like 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And in 2013, I got the news from my wife that we were going to have our first child. And I knew at that point that I was like, man, something's got to change. I can't, keep doing this grinding it out. I had, financial freedom, but I didn't have time freedom. And so basically at that time, in 2013, I was like, well, let me start up a real estate brokerage and here in San Antonio. And so I did that. I opened up Handy Realty, just a small boutique brokerage. And I thought, well, if I can go out and get, other agents, I can leverage that, that and be able to, hopefully slow down a little bit. And that was my thought. And so I did that for 4 years. That actually, it was like the opposite. I ended up going the wrong direction. I was working way more, trying to support, I had about 15 agents at the end of it after about 4 years. And I was like, this, I had tons of overhead. I was paying like 20 to 25 grand a month just to, pay all my bills. Right. And then at that point, finally, 2017, I was looking for other options. I happened to find EXP. I joined EXP. I've been here for the last 4 years. I've now been able to grow my group at EXP to just over 500 agents that I get to work with now. It's been an amazing experience. But doing that, I've also completely changed my entire real estate business here just in the last 4 years. I've been always prospecting based and kind of like ads based. Like that's how I've always kind of run my business up until I'd say about 3 years ago. That's when I kind of, discovered producing content. And I was like, man, like what is this really, blogging and YouTube? I knew YouTube was, like popular even, but blogging, I was like, I didn't know that was like a real estate thing, necessarily. I'd tried it, I'd make a post or something. And I was like, nobody looks at these. Like, why would I ever make blog posts? And so it was always just kind of like something, that I was like, I figured, I got to be prospecting. I got to be, running ads, Facebook ads, Google pay-per-click. And that was how I ran my real estate business. And it was always just still kind of, that, grind feeling. I was always productive and successful, but it was never getting easier. And it wasn't until I found content and actually doing it the right way, that, what it could do for you as far as, kind of, for one, just, making it to where you don't have those roller coaster income where it's,
Mm,
so sporadic.
right.
It kind of leveled out my income to where I always had, a steady stream of leads, which obviously in turn turned into a steady stream of deals. And so there's a lot of benefits that content has, done for me. And so now I just, try and teach and train, agents kind of the same thing to do for their business. So yeah, that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
I love it. And I love, I'm glad that you are here because it sounds like not only did you grind at real estate at one of the worst times to be grinding at real estate, right? Oh 08, oh
Yeah.
09, that whole thing. But I like that you described getting into content creation and still having to grind at it and then figuring out and kind of, finding the solution and finding the best way to run that. And now you're sharing that with agents so that they don't have to go through that difficult learning phase. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, let's kind of dig into that. Let's dig into what did your content creation look like early on, so maybe some agents can get a feel for or compare and see what they're doing that you felt like you were doing wrong, and then how did that transition into what you're doing right today?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, and I'll kind of go from why I even started with content, and this might go a little backwards from what a lot of people, if they're just looking for the sales side of it, might think about. But
Right.
for me, I started my content journey because of trying to grow my team and grow my group here at
Mm,
EXP. Originally, what I had done when I first joined the company was I was running ads, like to try and attract agents to my team, and that was working very effectively. But then all of a sudden EXP was like, hey, you can't run ads anymore for agent attraction team purposes, unless you're specifically just trying to recruit to your team.
mhm.
And that was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? And I was like, well, I guess if I can't run ads, if I come up organically when people just search, then they can't stop me from doing that. Right. And so that was
Right.
my thought getting into it. But then I was like, but I have no idea how I can even rank organically. And I
Mhm.
was like, so I had to start doing a lot of research on like SEO and how to even, build a website, build a blog, that kind of stuff. I've always used, I've got KV Core as my CRM. And so they give me a website, but it's not the same thing as what I wanted to do. So I had to
Right.
do a little bit of research and learning. But honestly, I mean, it wasn't anything that, people can't learn from just, going on YouTube and doing some searching and figuring it out if they're really passionate about it.
Mhm.
And I promise you that, for you to get passionate about it, you have to believe in it. Like for me, I knew already that the ad side was working, like, and I could continue to grow my team if I just showed up on Google. And so I was like, man, I know it'll work. And so I've just got to push through and really, show up organically now. That was the only difference that I had to do. So I had to figure it out. And so I forced myself, I started just researching stuff. I was looking at, all sorts of different YouTube channels, YouTube videos on, the different ways to optimize posts. And at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of it, a lot of the stuff that I had learned, it's really, we make it more complicated than it needs to be. A lot of times people
Mm,
can think like, oh, I don't know anything about SEO. It sounds really complicated. Like websites sound complicated, or even getting into YouTube, that might sound intimidating or complicated. But my biggest advice is just, take it a day at a time, take it a step at a time. Like, I created my first blog post, and I mean, it was terrible. Like, it was the first time I'd ever wrote anything. It probably
right.
was not optimized, but I was like in the game, and I was like, look, I'm committed to this. I kept doing it over and over and over. My posts would get better. I would learn things because, I didn't want to keep putting all this effort in if I wasn't going to be really good at it. So like I would be researching even as I was creating stuff. And then the next time I would do it, I would, change up something. I'd make it a little bit different. And not all of a sudden, like after like a few months, I started like seeing actual like fruits of my labor. Like I could actually
Mm,
see, people hitting my website. I could see, that people were actually starting to reach out now, whether it was a contact form or like a little funnel that I had built. And I was like, man, this is really amazing. And so that's when, I was like, all right, proof of concept, it works. Now I just need to really, go all in. And so because at the time I had a lot going on, I was still, actively selling a ton of real estate. And I was just trying to do this like little side project. It was almost like 10 or 15% of my effort. But now I was like, look, I got to make this at least half of my effort, like 50%. And so then I, committed to a posting schedule where I was like, look, I'm going to put up, 2 posts a week. That was my goal at the time. Now I've gotten to where, I do anywhere from about 3 to 5 posts a week on my site. So I mean, I've really scaled up the content, but in the beginning, 1 to 2 posts a week, as long as you're consistent, I think can really help out. But then, and then the other part of it too, and this is what separated me from, when I was doing blog posts early on, when they were not effective and I was like, nobody's looking at it, versus what I do now. The biggest difference that I can say that I made was doing keyword research, right? In the beginning, I was always creating content, that I thought was important, right? Like stuff that I would want to talk about, or things, but I never backed that up with like validating it with what Google says people are actually searching for. And so, I mean, there's a lot of tools that, that can help you out there from that standpoint, from like, let's say you're doing this on the buyer seller standpoint, you're trying to, create content for buyers and sellers. You can use a tool like, KW Finder, you can use SEMrush, you can use Ahrefs. There's quite a bit of them out there, or even just using Google Auto Suggest, quite honestly, like opening up like an incognito browser where it doesn't have your search history. Go in there and just type out, a couple words that you think that a buyer or a seller might be, interested in your area, and see what Google suggests, and usually what Google is suggesting means that people are actually searching for that. And you'll give you a lot of ideas. And so then when you, go and start talking about those different ideas and you start filling those gaps, that's when the content will start to get consumed. If you're just like doing things willy-nilly and you don't really have any, thought behind it, you're just going and typing. Yeah, you're doing a lot of work, but it may not be the most effective way of doing it. And so you just got to be strategic about it. And then also, I mean, one of the other things too that I realized through content is a lot of times people will feel like they don't have the, experience or who am I to be able to like, explain this topic or something. Like if you're a new agent or something, you might be thinking like, why would somebody want to listen to me? Maybe I'm not the expert in that field. I think, for one, you got to kind of take a step back and realize, you can like for me, I just try and stay ahead of the game just a little bit, right? So like, I may not know everything that I have content on, but I've done the research ahead of time. So I do research it and then I create it. So it's like, I might not have known about what that topic was when I first found the topic, but by the time I write about the topic, I do know everything. And now I've, done the research. And so that helps you out in your business so much, because, you're learning. And then when you go to teach it, that's like a whole nother level. Then you internalize it, it becomes a part of you, and you start to grow and have some really, really unique ideas and things that, when people see that you're teaching others, you become that expert, and that authority figure. And that really helps establish your credibility for everything that you're doing, whether it's outbound prospecting, calling expireds, FSBOs. If you have something that you can point them to that shows that you're like an authority on the subject, I promise you all of your efforts start to get, amplified.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So there's so much to dig into here, and I'm gonna break this down one piece at a time. Thank you, Kyle. That is an amazing journey. And I think there are so many principles here about your content strategy that are totally analogous to real estate itself, right? So I'm gonna back it up to when you said, people make it more complicated than it needs to be. It's all about slow, steady improvement, right? Because I think, in real estate, a lot of people get into it thinking, oh, I'm going to get into real estate and make super easy money super fast, right? Not necessarily true, usually not true. And that's why so many people quit the industry. Same thing with content, right? I'm just going to make tons of content that's going to get tons of attention really fast. Not the case, right? So it's all about doing slow, steady improvement. And then I love the idea of don't get discouraged, just be consistent, right? Don't make a day or a week or a month's worth of post and then quit. You got to keep posting, because not only does that give you time to grow and give more time for eyes to come to your content, but it gives you time to improve your skills along the way. Right?
Yep. Absolutely. You can always go back and, like I still revise old posts, I revise old videos,
which is good SEO practice also, right?
Absolutely. Stuff's always changing, and you're going to need to update that stuff anyway. So, I mean, don't, stress too much about like your first stuff. Like just get it out there, don't put anything that's going to like hurt your brand, or that's, like really, really terrible or something, like just to put it out, like, think through it. But don't overthink it where you're like, oh, it's got to be perfect or something. It's just, that's just not what what's going to be successful. Yeah.
Right. And so I want to ask you, when you kind of transitioned from this idea of like, and maybe you weren't there, but like, oh, it's got to be perfect. Hey, I'm not getting a lot of attention into, okay, I'm going to be patient and wait for that to come. It
Mhm.
sounds like there's a pretty serious mindset shift there. That's again analogous to real estate, where you kind of take your mindset away from money,
Mhm.
maybe being clicks and views and all this attention, and then kind of transitioning that into, I'm going to focus on building the audience and letting it organically grow, right? Because I think that's the difference between forced growth and organic growth, is what are you focused on and what is your goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was, one of those things where, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here with content. Like, I mean, we
Right.
know it's effective if you do it over long periods of time. I mean, if you look at anyone, like I'm, good friends with John Lee Dumas,
Mhm.
famous, good podcaster, great podcaster, one of the first, and in the business, and he was, just podcasting, every single day, and over time, it went really well for him. And you look at all these YouTubers, it's like, they're just consistent over long periods of time and it works for them. And so content does work. I mean, that's when it doesn't work, or like if you give up, like that's really the only way it doesn't work, is if you give up. And so I knew that if I just kept being patient with it, it was going to click in. It wasn't like, it was just, I would keep putting all this work in and it was never going to provide results. Like I knew enough that, of other people, that it just kept leading me to learn more and do more. But yeah. And so, I mean, really, as far as the way that I looked at it, obviously I think that there's two kind of camps you have to think about. You've got the outbound prospecting camp, and
Mm.
then you've got the inbound, the attraction, the content camp. And a lot of agents, if you want to get off that kind of treadmill, that hamster wheel, you got to have both of those sides, right? Like
Right.
so many agents focus on the prospecting side, and it's great. I mean, you're going to hustle, you're going to work, but you get burnt out. There's always these ebbs and flows in your business,
Mhm.
and it always feels like you're struggling.
Right.
When you have content, it's like you've built up like this amazing database of past clients that constantly pump you deals. That's like what honestly having content is like for me. And because your content works for you 24/7. If people
Right.
find my stuff in the middle of the night and set up appointments with me that are on my calendar the next day, and that's just whenever I was so focused on like the outbound prospecting, it wasn't like that. Like if I stopped prospecting, like my business would shut off right away. And so I had to keep that up. And so I think the way that I look at it now is like prospecting is like your today money. Like you got to do it,
Mhm.
because prospecting is the most effective way to like get a deal today. Like you got to do that. You got to pay the bills. Um, but then in the background, be building up this content, whether it's through blogging, whether it's through podcasting, whether it's through YouTube, because that's your future money, and that's going to be what helps kind of your business steady itself out over a long period of time. And kind of mentioned this to you earlier, it's like plus in the meantime, even while you are heavily prospecting, some of that content can also translate to some immediate results, because it does elevate your brand, it elevates your expertise. And so, yeah, so I mean, even in the meantime, the early term, when maybe not a whole lot of people are searching you on Google, and you're like, I'm not getting a lot of results. If you still tell people about it and you're kind of forcing them to see your stuff, then that's going to help you. It's going to elevate your brand. It's going to do things for your prospecting efforts and just improve your overall results.
Right. I love that. And I want to dig into what you mentioned briefly, which is your posting schedule, right?
Mhm.
I think we've done a really good job so far of laying the foundation. Why is content important? What's the balance between prospecting and content? Let's dig into some of the nitty gritty and get kind of granular here and talk about your posting schedule. You said that you post what, 3 or 4, maybe more times a week?
Yeah, I do 3 now,
Okay.
3 posts per week. I had gotten to the point where I was doing 6 posts per week,
Wow.
but now I've slowed that down, and I'm doing 3 posts a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the reason being is I'm actually trying to duplicate all my content, like be more effective with my time. And so I'm
Mhm.
actually taking my posts that I'm already doing research for and creating my blog posts, and I'm turning those into YouTube videos. I'm almost
Mm.
basically using the scripts using the post as my script for my YouTube video. And then I can turn those into a podcast, because I can rip the audio from the video, put it
Right.
up on a podcast. So now it's like, you're being more efficient because you're already doing all the research anyways. And so it's like, okay, but now I can take that and I can duplicate that out. I can take short clips of it and put it on Instagram, on
Right.
Facebook, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. So it sounds like you start by doing research, writing a blog post, and then turning that blog post into other pieces of content. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I used to go the other way around. I used to have like a YouTube video. I would start with that, and then I would like transcribe it and try and edit the transcription into, into a blog post. That I found was really difficult from two ends because one, when I do the YouTube side of it and I don't have some kind of a script to go off of, I would always have like bullet points or something. But if I did that, my videos would be super long. It'd be 30, 40, 50 minutes. You can probably tell I like to talk. So, I mean, if I start getting into something, I start talking about things, I go off on tangents, and it's, and it takes me sometimes a little while to like get to like the core idea that I want to talk about.
Right.
And that's not good typically on YouTube. You want your videos to be, 10, 12, 15 minutes. And so, if they're 40 minutes long, like nobody wants to watch a video that long typically, or they don't have the time to. And so I realized, and then when I would transcribe it, I'd have 40 minutes worth of transcription. I'd have to edit through and try and, narrow that down to a reasonably short blog post. It was just so difficult. And so I was like, well, if I start doing the blog post first, I can really craft out my ideas really well. I can write them out. I've already written them now once. So it's like in my mind. And then now, like to the point where like I can literally take like just a transcription, put it up on my screen, kind of read through it, talk how I want to talk, go to the next point, and then you just cut and edit the clips, make a YouTube video, and in that video, I know it's like if I make a blog post that's 2,000 words, that takes me like 12 minutes to go through and to make a 12-minute video on YouTube. So it's perfect. So I just write 2,000 word blog posts. It makes a 12-minute YouTube video, and then I rip that into a podcast, and now I've got 3 different pieces of content from one thing.
I love it. So with this derivative content is what we'll call it, right? You kind of have your pillar content, you have the derivative content. Are you posting that within the same week, or is it kind of the week after, or what is the schedule of kind of that drip down derivative content?
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you, like I do have some series that I create. A lot of my stuff is, because I'm doing keyword research. I mean, there's just a lot of times that I get sporadic ideas, and so I don't have necessarily all series like based content.
Right.
There will be time where like in like 1 week I'll kind of knock out like a whole series of stuff, like whether it's like YouTube, like if I'm doing like YouTube stuff, I might do 3 blog posts in a week about YouTube, about different ideas. One might be like keyword research, one might be like the production and editing, and then the other one might be like publishing and like the SEO side of it, right? And I'll do those 3 in a week. And that way you can create kind of like series content. That stuff, especially on YouTube, is super powerful. Creating series, creating playlists, because it increases your watch time across your videos. And so, I mean, that's definitely a good thing. Blogging, it's not necessarily super important that you have like series on blogs. A lot of my traffic is search based. So they come on there and, they'll read one article and they'll either subscribe to my email list, they'll leave, they'll see another thing in another day and come back. But they're not like so much focused on like reading 3 articles in a row. But YouTube, definitely, it is important to kind of, think about that strategically. Like if you want to talk about a subject, how can you break that up? Because the one thing I'll tell you, if you're thinking too big, like I'm going to do, this video about YouTube, and it's just that generalized, there's no way you can do an effective, YouTube video in 12 minutes, like, and tell people everything they need to know. And so that's why breaking it up into different pieces and steps is usually more effective. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good way to do it. Is kind of piecing it out.
Okay. So as far as like the content itself and the subjects for, let's say for newer agents, because we've got a question from Amanda Smith here, and she says, what suggestions do you have for increasing your organic engagement? She's been posting regularly for 2 years with very no interaction. I'm going to kind of, let's answer that question, but I'm going to tack onto that question and say, what do you recommend as far as like getting specific with your community versus general industry knowledge versus general market trends? Like, where's a good place for someone who's newer at this to get started?
Yeah. So like on the sales side of it, for real estate sales, what I would recommend is, obviously our different niches, like is typically going to be like our market area. So like I know a lot of agents that are very effective at creating YouTube videos that are centered around people that are looking to gather information about their specific market. So for instance, You know, and typically this will involve people that are moving from like out of state or something like that.
Okay.
But if you're like, let's say like I'm here in San Antonio, so like some of the videos that I would want to create as a real estate agent here are going to be like, you know, the pros and cons of moving to San Antonio, the 5 things that you need to know about buying a home in San Antonio, the 7 things you need to know about, you know, selling your house here in San Antonio.
Mhm.
Like, you know, these things that are like very, so you know, you focus down your niche, right? And you've got some ideas, but I've also looked at, you know, the keyword research side of it. You know, what are people actually searching for? So, you know, you can find people are searching for, you know, selling a home in San Antonio. That's a common question. You can definitely, if you go on Google and you search pros and cons of, you know, living in San Antonio, that'll be an auto suggest by Google. So you know that people are searching for those terms. So like if you're looking to increase your organic engagement, I think the thing you have to like look at is, are you really targeting keywords that you've researched before, and it
Mm.
does have a good search volume, like people are actually looking for that? Because again, you know, I talked about it a little earlier, it's like, you know, I fell into that same trap. I was creating content, but it wasn't the content that people were looking for, you know, that they were
Right.
actually searching for. And if you don't already have an audience created, when you create that type of content that's not searchable, it's very difficult to get engagement. You can start to create more unique, off the cuff kind of stuff when you have an audience,
Mhm.
because naturally, let's say you've already built that audience now, YouTube or blogging, like, you know, however it is, if you've already got like an email list, you're going to have some people, some audience user base that's going to see your content right away when you publish it. And because of that, you know, if they like the content, even if it's not searchable, it tells YouTube like, hey, this is a good video. So then they basically start to promote that on the, you know, homepage of YouTube and stuff like that. Whereas if you don't already have that audience, that user base that's kind of baked in, that's going to look at your stuff, and you push out something that's not searchable, YouTube doesn't know what to do with it really, and so they don't know
Right.
where to show it to. And same thing for blogging. You know, Google wouldn't know what to do with it either. And so, you know, if you're not getting engagement, I would say maybe you need to go back and look at, you know, how are you crafting your keywords? Like, you know, are you really targeting ones that people are searching for? And the other thing too that you got to be, you know, cognizant of, and some of these tools will do that for you, like the ones that I mentioned earlier, Ahrefs, you know,
Mhm.
SEMrush, is they tell you a difficulty. Like if I was going to go try and write a blog post about the iPhone 13 right now, my
Right.
stuff's not going to rank. Like, and it's too competitive, right? So like, you know, what terms are you going after? Sometimes you have to go after like longer term keywords when you're just getting started, because, you know, if you know, let's say San Antonio homes for sale, like, I mean, that'd be a very difficult you know, term to rank for. But if I was, you know, the top, you know, homes in San Antonio with a pool under $300,000, I could
Mm.
write something about that, and or make a video about it, and it would be more effective, right? Or instead of, you know, San Antonio homes, maybe I got to go a little bit more granular and say like, you know, what you need to know about the, you know, the Alamo Ranch community in San Antonio, Texas, or something like that, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
just, you know, getting a little bit more granular with it. That way you do have traffic that's going to see your stuff organically. And as you build that up and you start to get, you know, more and more keywords that you're ranking for, and you're getting more viewers that are watching, you can go after more competitive keywords down the road.
Gotcha. I think that's a great answer there for you, Amanda, who is also from San Antonio, Texas area.
I
She's
saw
a
that.
regular viewer. She watches every episode of our podcast. So
Oh,
thank you for the great question, Amanda. We hope that
thank you,
helped.
Amanda.
Um, I have a question about kind of dispersing content, right? So you have your website, you have
Mhm.
your YouTube channel, you have all the content you write for both of those, the blogs, the videos, all that. Where else do you post them? Do you spread them on forums, on Facebook pages, on other people's websites? Do you have a newsletter? What does that look like, and how does that help kind of grow your audience?
Yeah. So that's all a kind of a funny story in and of itself. So I remember too the same thing about like building an email list. You know, in the beginning, I was like, man, email lists, like, is that really like like, is that a thing? Is that really,
Right.
you know, people still read their emails today? You know, I always kind of, you know, joked on that, and I never really, you know, paid much mind to it. And I always thought too, like, it'd be really difficult to build an email list. Like, you know, like who's going to want to sign up for you know, an email list? But now what I've realized is, one thing that, you know, and this is something for people to know that I think is so important, even versus like Facebook, Instagram, all that type of stuff. You want to own your traffic, right? As much of
Right.
it as you can. And the thing about an email list is you own that, right? Like it doesn't matter what the YouTube algorithm does, doesn't matter what Instagram does, doesn't matter what TikTok does. Like you own that email list, you own your own domain on your website. So that's why I feel like blogging is so powerful, because like you own these things. It's really difficult. I mean, yeah, Google does change the algorithm and stuff on their search, but for the most part, that stuff is, is stays pretty static. Whereas, like always on like social media, like Facebook, Instagram, that stuff is constantly changing. Like, is Reels popular today? It's always something different.
Right.
And so finally, when I realized that, I was like, all right, I need to start building an email list, and that way I can have my baked in, like, people that I know these are my people, like they're going to watch my stuff, they're going to read my stuff. And so that's when I basically had, I've got my blog set up. Whenever somebody comes to one of my blog posts, kylehandy.com, you go to my blog post, it'll have a pop-up that asks like, hey, would you like to sign up for this newsletter? You'll get a daily email, or you get, I think it's a weekly email.
Right.
And people sign up, and then from there on now, I mean, to this point where I think I've got just under 10,000 email subscribers now.
Wow.
And in like literally a year and a half, 2 years of consistently blogging, and where I'm getting like 700 to 800 a month now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't even believe that, and just imagine, I mean, like if you were getting 700 to 800 buyer emails or seller emails a month, I mean, what you could do with that. And it's all because you're providing value, and people are, wanting to hear more about it over a period of time. And so what's cool about that is whenever I create a new YouTube video, or whenever I publish a new blog post, which now they, come out at the same day, like I do a Monday, Wednesday blog post, a Monday, Wednesday YouTube video, I send out one email on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So 3 emails a week. And in that email, I say, hey, look, this is my newest YouTube video. It's about, X, Y, and Z. But I also, if you're curious about this, I created a blog post on this, and it's about X, Y, and Z. Pick which one you want to go check out, go check it out today. Right. Like, and so in one email, they can see, the video or the blog post, or both if they want to.
Right.
And that is so helpful, because now, when I send that out to 10,000 people, my open rates are like 25 to 30%. So that means, 2,500 to 3,000 people are opening up my email. And then I get anywhere from like 5 to 7 click-through rates. So, I mean, that's, quite a bit of people right away, 500 to 700 people that are going to go rush out and read and engage with my content. And that's all built through my website. And so that's where, like, I do think that having, if you're just going to go after like YouTube or podcast or whatever, it's still worth your while to like look into building an email list, however you can do it. I know people that are, let's say you don't want to build a blog and do all this. You just want to have a YouTube channel. You should still think of like, all right, well, I know people get notified and stuff like that, but how could I create like a form? Like there's a lot of, like, I use Aweber for my email list, and you can just create simple forms through Aweber. And you could put that as a link in your description for people to sign up, just so that way they can get notified via email whenever you create a new video, and make it a little bit more enticing for them to say like, hey, look, I'd love for you to join my newsletter. I'll send you, an update whenever I publish a new video, but also I'll send you, my free guide on, whatever it is, the 5 things you need to know about buying a house in San Antonio, right? Like have something that really entices them to want to do that. I think that'll be super effective. But yeah, building your email list is key. But I also think too, I mean, if you're providing content regularly, here as far as like buyers and sellers go, you also need to have some kind of a call to action for them to be able to set up an appointment with you, a meeting. And for those purposes, like in the description of my videos, I'll put in there, if you'd like a free consultation, buyer seller consultation, click here, and it takes them to my Calendly, where they can basically click on my Calendly, set up an appointment with me, no obligation, right? And I'll actually, if it's a listing appointment, I'll do kind of a preliminary like CMA with them, via Zoom. So I'm sharing my screen, I'm showing them comps, stuff like that. Because for one, I want to make sure that they're in line with what I think the value is before I go drive out to their home and spend time. But then for two, they're getting value. They're seeing, what my expertise can be on it. And I can show them, the comps straight away from my computer. And on the buyer side of it, I've just got a buyer presentation that I do via Zoom. And I say, hey, this is the process that I take. We're going to get you pre-qualified. We're going to go start looking at properties. There's an inspection process. So I kind of go through, I answer their questions for them. So I'm just trying to always add value. But the biggest thing is I've got a call to action in my description of my videos, because you'd be surprised. At first I was like, I didn't think people would do that. And then I started getting people like signing up for stuff like now, where I get 700 signups on my email list. Like, that's mind boggling to me. And then I get anywhere from like 30 to 40 consultations, every single month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just from putting a link in the description of videos where you're adding value to the people.
Right. And I think, I think you touched on this earlier, is you said, like, I mean, there's kind of this negative perception of email lists, right? And
Yeah.
email subscriptions and stuff, but that's just not the case, right? You've seen that. I know we've seen that at REDX, where tons of people opt in to our weekly newsletter, to our podcast, right?
Yep.
People want to digest your content as long as it's valuable.
Yep.
So as long as you're consistently pumping out that value, people are going to click and sign up and then follow through. I love that.
Yeah. And I think too, as real estate agents, especially, being with REDX, because I don't know, I didn't talk a whole lot about my experience, but I've been REDX, for a long time. I've done the expireds for sale by owners. Like, I know it. And what's cool about that is for those of you that are, outbound prospecting consistently, you start to hear what people's objections are, quite a bit, right? Like,
Right.
that's a lot of what we hear, right? There's a lot of
Right.
objections, a lot of no, right? But you start to like get a gauge on like, what do people have objections about? Like, what stops people from taking action?
Mhm.
What are some common questions that people typically have? And, and when you start from that standpoint and think like, all right, these are what people, have trouble with, or, they seem to always, this comes up. That's what you want to make content on. Right.
Mm.
And so when you think about it from that standpoint, and you think, okay, this is what they're constantly saying, then go out and do the keyword research, find out like, how are they saying it though? Like on Google, like, how are they searching
Right.
for that? Like, you got to make sure that you make that link. If you just go and, you have all these questions, you start talking about it, but you haven't linked it to how they're searching for it, I think
Yeah.
that sometimes can throw people off. But if you can find out and like link it to how people are actually searching for that, create content around that, for one, that's going to be some of your best content that you create that I'm sure people will just search for. They're going to appreciate it, because if you're hearing it, I can tell you a lot of people are thinking it and they're just not saying it. And so they come across your videos, it'll answer the questions. But then two, you can also use those as follow-up with your prospects that you're doing, your phone calls with. And so like, if
Mm.
somebody says like, like, I just don't think that, right now is the best time to move because of XYZ. Actually, you know what? I actually just made a video about this. I'd love to share it with you. Would it be okay if I, emailed this over to you, or just texted you the link to the video after? You can watch it and, and just see what that does for you. Right. Like, and how cool is that now? Right. Like, cause like, you just talk to them, you send them this link, they see you as the expert because now you've got a video on it, or a blog post, or whatever it is. And you can share that with them. And yeah, that's just, like I say, it'll exemplify, it'll kind of like amplify what you're doing with your prospecting.
That is such a fantastic strategy. You answered one of my questions before I even had a chance to ask it, which was like, how do you tie your content into prospecting? And it's almost like you're creating the content from the prospecting, right? I love this idea of, let me take my objections and turn those objections into content, so that the inbound traffic I get, those objections have already been handled, right?
Yep,
You're already
absolutely.
one step closer to the appointment. You're one step closer to showing them that you're an experienced, knowledgeable agent. And then that content continues to drive traffic and continues to bring value to other people. That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's
yeah.
fantastic. And I think that's a good balance of like, okay, do I do one or the other? You do both,
Yep.
because they can feed each other.
Exactly. And then just by you doing the research to like answer that, whether it's a blog post or in a
Right.
video, by you doing the like, because you might get those questions, and a lot of times, we're all about like, oh, what's the script? Like, what's my response should be, or whatever. And yeah, it's good to kind of know what you're going to say, but if you make a video about it, you make a blog post, you're going to organize your thoughts, you're going to put it out there in the world. And then like, when you get that question the next time, I promise you, not only will you have, evidence or your own video, right, that you can kind of share with them to back it up, but you'll be able to like talk about it just a little bit more confidently, because now you've already like went through the whole process of making a blog, making a video about it. Right. So it kind of forces us to get better when you go out there and, create this content.
Right. And I think it works both ways, where it's also an antidote to call reluctance, right? I
Oh
know a
yeah.
lot of people are hesitant
Yep.
to get on the phone.
Yep.
They don't like the grind. It's rejection, and objections are hard.
Yep.
But if you're going into that with the mindset of like, well, I'm going out to find content so that not only am I prospecting, but I'm providing value and building my audience. It's a win-win situation. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
fantastic.
I mean, yeah. The best thing you can do as a new agent is just, I mean, learn learn your craft, like, I mean, like one of the things that I deal with a lot of times as agents, join my team and they might be new, is they don't want to take any action until they like feel like they're like an expert. At least they feel like they know something, and you're never going to feel 100% completely, confident in your skills. Even there's times where like I don't make certain calls or I'm nervous to do something, right? And I've been in the business now for 13 years. But one of the things that I will say that helps you overcome that is if you do, just kind of like force yourself to go out there and learn certain things, especially things that might be holding you up from taking action on other stuff. If you go out there and like you learn, even and start small, don't just think like I got to learn my entire market. Be the expert at some things that are really small, especially if you're like, let's say you're circle prospecting, or you're focused on a certain area, like a neighborhood, or if you get expireds or FSBOs and they tend to be in the same area or something like that. Try and really learn that area. Learn what is the average days on market, what's the average listing price, what's the average sold price, how many homes come up in that neighborhood, a month, a year, right? Be able to talk the talk. And when you do that research, put it out in a blog post, put it out in a video, you're going to know more. Even if you've never personally sold a house in that area yourself, you're going to learn way more. And it'll kind of like just exude through you the next time you're on the phone with somebody, and it'll probably propel you to make those calls when you might not have before. So,
right. Excellent. Well, I think that we're running out of time here, but I think that is a great way to wrap this up, Kyle.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Everyone who is listening or watching this podcast, please go rewatch and re-listen to this episode, and then go to Kyle's website, subscribe to his content. One, because it'll teach you a lot, and two, because you can learn. I mean, the whole reason we brought Kyle on here today was to teach you about his content strategy. He's so open and so kind to share all this with us. So thank you, Kyle. But please go like and subscribe to Kyle's content, see what he's posting, see what he's making, and at the very least, replicate that for niches in your market, right? Because that's what he did. That's what he's here to teach agents to do. And I think that's what we're all here to replicate. So Kyle, thank you again. Do you have any last words that you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, no, just, I mean, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm like, people sometimes on YouTube, they're like, oh, like he will never reach out or he'll never respond. Like, I love this business. Like, I'm so passionate about real estate. I'm so passionate about real estate agents. Yeah. And, you'd be surprised. Like, send me a message. You can email me, Kyle@thehandyteam.com. That's my email. Okay. You can reach out to me on social media, send me a direct message on Instagram. That's typically the easiest way. Just search for me, Real Kyle Handy, shoot me a message. I'm happy to help. If, a lot of times I'll get questions. People ask me something and I've already got a video about it. So I just send them a link to the video because I'm like, hey, I've already done it. Watch this video and then let me know, what you think or what questions you have after that. But yeah, I'm just an open book. It's that abundance mindset. So I think we can all win together. Yes. And just kind of elevate being real estate agents. And so anything I can ever do, just reach out and let me know.
Excellent, Kyle. Well, that's so good of you. I'm going to put your website up on screen. Is this right? KyleHandy.com.
That's it. That's the one.
Excellent. So go check out his website, go subscribe to his newsletter, go subscribe to his YouTube and all of his content. Check him out on social media, ask him questions. He is here to help. Kyle, we are definitely going to have to bring you back on the podcast because this was amazing.
I'd love it.
We packed so much into the last 40 minutes. I think there's so much more to cover. So thank you. Amanda says, great tips, Kyle.
Oh, so thanks Amanda. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Hopefully we'll see each other around in San Antonio.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep an eye out for each other.
That's right.
For our audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out wherever you like to listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever it is. Please check us out. Again, go check out Kyle's content, and we will see you next week, same time, same place. So thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
See you.